Know why, but for some reason this week I just found myself thinking a lot about just how much life has changed just over the course of my lifetime. Technology really has, think about how different life was even 10 years ago. Think of the fact that think about all the things that you're going to do with your cell phone today. Think about how easily we can get information. Which got me thinking about invention. There's a spark in all of us, really, to create and to innovate. I think that creativity is what the Bible is talking about when it tells us that we are created in the image of God. It's our ability to be creative. And maybe not all of us are Thomas Edisons, but we all have the ability to be creative and to innovate. And because of that, our world is changing faster and faster. And I was thinking about that, and I ran across, as I was doing so, I ran across some photos, and I just have to share them because they show maybe some of the inventions, some of our inventiveness gone awry, some of the inventions from history that, I'm sure their creators thought that they were really revolutionary, but I think they missed the mark just a little bit. And so here's this first one. This is what it looks like. It is a cage to hang out your window for your child. If you live in New York or some urban center and maybe you want your child to get a little fresh air, but you don't want to take them out of the city where there's actually fresh air, there's this happy little medium with this cage that you could fasten to your window and hang your baby outside. Here I thought the infant mortality rate was higher in the 30s because of the Depression, but apparently it's because of this. Fortunately, there was a backup system that went with it, because if the cage should fall, there was always the nice soft pavement down below to catch them. Almost as bad as this next invention, which is a baby carrier. There's a little baby between there. I think maybe it's for extra chubby babies that are too heavy for parents to carry on their own. So strap them between you. I have to say it's kind of a lame invention, but what really I love about this picture is they're ice skating, right? I mean, it seems dangerous enough, but let's go ahead and strap sharp blades to our feet and travel around on a slippery surface while we carry our baby around in this thing. The next one is a motorized surfboard. Now, if I'm being really honest, this looks like fun, right? It does. But I think what really sells it is not so much the invention as the fashion that goes with it. Because if I'm going to ride this, I am going to do so in a double-breasted suit and a bowler hat, just like this fellow is. And my last two really are sort of related. The next one is from the 50s. This is a time where nuclear holocaust was a real possibility. And so I have to assume that with that kind of stress in everybody's life, one cigarette's worth of nicotine just isn't going to calm you down. So you're going to need 20 of them, right? 20 cigarettes all at once. And finally, this last one related to it. Our last dumb invention, and I love this. This is great. It's for couples, and you can't really see it very well in here, but there is a cigarette sticking out of that. Because if you're a couple, you can go to the movies, you can go out to romantic dinners and share a nice kiss, but there's nothing more romantic that couples can share with one another as lung cancer. And so this was invented as well. Well, as far as inventions with an actual point, I recently was listening to a talk by a man named Mark Pagel, who's an evolutionary biologist. And Mark makes the argument that of all the inventions that there are in the world, everything that we've created over the years, the light bulb, the internet, toaster strudel, and everything else, he makes the argument that one invention is more important than all the others. In fact, it's leaps and bounds more important. Do you have any idea what would be the one invention that was so much more important than everything else? Television, I heard. What was the other?
Indoor plumbing.
Indoor plumbing. I'm grateful for that, particularly with the weather over the past few days. Anything at all? It's language. Language is the most powerful tool ever invented. It's true. Language can rewire human minds. Language makes it possible for you to implant a human thought from your brain and to place it in the brain of another. And really, if you think about it, language has extraordinary power. In many places all around the world, you can be jailed if you say the wrong thing, or even killed. Language can lift us up, or it can destroy us. It can bring about violence. If you have ever read a poem that moved you, if you've ever wondered why school children still memorize the Gettysburg Address, if you've ever seen old newsreel footage of a screaming mad German dictator working up a crowd into a frenzy, then you start to realize that language has power. The writers of the Bible knew this. When John wants to describe the majesty and the gravity and the simplicity of Jesus Christ, he starts his gospel off by saying, in the beginning was the what?
Word.
The Word. In the beginning was the Word. In fact, Pagel argues that the invention of language is likely the only reason that we don't still live like Neanderthals. And this is for a simple reason. There are a few animals out in the wild that can use simple tools to help them in their daily life. Think of chimps that can take a stick and put it into termite mounds to coax termites out to eat. But real progress only happens through collaboration. And collaboration only happens if there's a means to communicate. So here we are today with everything that we see around us, because it was created through human collaboration, through language. In fact, I would argue that our passage today from Philippians demonstrates just how extraordinary of a tool language is. Because the power of language is on full display in the story of the early church. In the Roman Empire of Paul's day, everybody was a pagan. There was one tiny minority out in the sticks, out in the hinterlands. And those were the Jews who worshipped one God. And within that tiny minority, there was a tiny minority of them. The tiny minority of Christians, of dissidents. How in the world does that very small handful of people, and think about this. Jesus was resurrected in 30 AD. And within a generation, the Roman Empire, the heartbeat of civilization, this tiny band of his followers who live in this tiny province of Judea, which is part of one of the way out back in the hinterland parts of the empire, these followers spread Jesus' message from one side of the empire to the other. Within 10 generations, the empire is fully Christianized. And you can see this happening in this letter. Here is Paul, 20 years out from the crucifixion, carefully corresponding with an empire-wide network. He's going to send Timothy here. He wants to hear good news from there. All of this happening through language. Paul is imprisoned as he writes this. This is another demonstration of the power of language. Paul has said something that has landed him in jail. But Paul knows the Philippians need support, so he's going to send Timothy to participate and to give the good news. You see, Paul and the early church have been using the power of language, written and especially spoken. They are telling people of the good news that Jesus Christ, this upstart rabbi from Galilee, has done something to completely change the way that the world works. Words are spreading like fire, and people want to hear it. I would argue that the most powerful force at work in the first century Roman Empire is language. We're talking about faith sharing in our church today, and evangelism. And I talked about this 2 weeks ago, but I want to expand on it just a little bit. Do you know what the word evangelism means? It's Greek. It starts with the first part of the word is a root that's A-U, the letter E-U, which means good. Think of a euphemistic term. It's something that you say that's a good replacement for something else. So "you" is good, and angelion means message. Evangelism, or euangelion, is literally the sharing of good words or a good message. And it was actually a Roman term. When an emperor died in the empire, there was always a question of who would succeed him. The hierarchy in Rome, the politicians, all the powerful generals, they would all start jockeying for power. And after a process which could include bribery and political maneuvering and sometimes even war, after that process was over, a winner was produced, and the new emperor would send good news or a good message, an euangelion, all throughout the empire to let everyone know who was in charge. It was time for everyone to fall in line behind him. Well, the early Christians took this term, and even though they were among the most powerless in the empire, they argued for a true euangelion, that a true king, the Son of God, had come into the world, and through his death and resurrection, he had ushered in a new and better age. See, what we need to understand is that you and I might not be comfortable with evangelism. Maybe we're uncomfortable sharing our faith. But you're already doing it. Everyone has faith in something. Everyone is paying heed to a number of competing euangelions. You are an evangelist for something. You are communicating to your friends and your families that you have faith in something. You have faith in do you have faith in the life-giving Christ or the death-obsessed world? Everyone is proclaiming faith in something. The question is what? What are you telling the world that you have faith in? Yesterday we woke up and found out that for the latest time in a very long and sad trend, that a young person's life became so chaotic and out of control that he decided the best course of action was to try and lash out and destroy everything that he could. And as disturbing as that is, in and of itself, we are finding out that this young man had recorded and posted YouTube videos and had written hundreds of pages of a hateful manifesto, explaining why he wanted so badly to hurt and destroy and kill. This angry small person was an evangelist. He didn't just want carnage, he wanted to come with a message. He went forth as an evangelist for death and evil. Now that is an extreme example. But I mention it because words have as much power in this world as bullets. Ideas have at least as much power as guns wielded by ruined people. There are plenty of subtle evangelists who work on behalf of evil and death. And this kid was poisoned by the words of other death evangelists. He was convinced that life was worth living only if it was lived neck deep in women and sex and money and popularity. And that evangelistic message, and you don't have to look far to see where it's poisoning our world today, but that evangelistic message in the hands of someone who is drunk with narcissism and who is emotionally unsound is a dangerous, dangerous message. This is why our call to evangelize is important. Because we have to offer the world an alternative to the madness of this world. I like Pope Francis's words on the issue. He says, there is a kind of preaching which falls to each of us as a daily responsibility. Do you hear that? There is a kind of preaching which falls to all of us. It is all of our jobs to break through the death words of the world with words of life. Words. I really like this Pope. Listen to what he goes on to say. Life grows by being given away, and it weakens in isolation and comfort. Indeed, those who enjoy life most are those who leave security on the shore and and become excited by the mission of communicating life to others. What he is saying, and what we can see in the story of the early church, both in this passage and elsewhere, is that when we share our faith, when we share how Jesus has mattered to us, it's one of the most life-giving things that we can do, not just for those around us that we share it with, but for us as well. In our passage, Paul is helping orchestrate a few pieces in this extraordinary movement, because people are sharing words of life. You don't have to be an eloquent speaker. You don't even have to be a mediocre one. When you share faith with others, it brings life into the world. You become an evangelist for life in a world that evangelizes on behalf of death. I was recently watching the movie Amistad. Has anyone ever seen Amistad? It's about an illegal slave trading ship that's captured in pre-Civil War America. And it tells the story of these West African slaves who have been kidnapped and brought across the sea in their quest for freedom. They are found by abolitionists who fight for their release and return to Africa. And it's a story of what we do when we speak words of life into the deadness. And I want to show you one scene from it, because in it, one of the Africans has gotten a hold of a Bible. Someone has given it to him. He doesn't know how to read. He doesn't even speak English. And even though he can't read it, using the illustration, he shares the story of life in a place of death with his friends. Now we're going to roll it, and I'm going to read the subtitles because they're small, and I don't know that you'll be able to read them in the back of the room. But let's show that, and the whole scene is in Mende, which is a West African language. So let's show that scene now. You don't have to pretend to be interested in it. Nobody's watching but me. I'm not pretending. I'm beginning to understand it. Their people have suffered. Their lives are full of suffering. Many were born and everything changed. Who is he? I don't know, but everywhere he goes, he's followed by Here he's healing people with his hands. Protecting them. Women, children. What's this? He also walked across the sea. But then something happened. He was captured and accused of some crime. Here he is with his hands tied. He must have done something. Why? What did we do? Whatever it was serious enough to kill him for. This is just a story. But look, that's not the end of it.
Boylo. Boyjima. Confite a Dio onnipotenti, beate Maria sempre Vergine. Tiangie. Kuyanto Michele Arcangelo. Tibembe kule siamo apie. Beato Giovanni Battista. Tatoaha. Boylo. Ningayama.
Then finally he rose into the sky.
Beatum Ioannem Baptista, Sanctus Apostolos Petrum et Paulum, omnes sanctos et vos fratres, orare pro me ad Dominum Deum nostrum, confiteor Deum Mimia, Beate Maria, Pia Fea Lina, Ibaha, Beato Ioanni Baptiste, Sanctis Apostolos Timua, omnibus Pillo, et vobis fratres,
Doesn't look so bad. See, evangelism, it isn't something that you push. It, as we're tempted sometimes to think, it isn't something manipulative or obtrusive. For sharing our faith effectively, then what is happening is that we are meeting our friends at the place of lostness and death in their lives. And we're telling them that we have found another way. In fact, in another of his letters, Paul's words almost cry out from the page, "Woe to me if I do not proclaim the gospel." We live in a world steeped in moral bankruptcy. We live in a world in which people are hurt and lost. And for too long, all of us have lived as if life's meaning comes from things we can acquire and consume. I was in a church secretary once, I was in a church sanctuary once, which was surrounded by posters which put this problem into focus. And they said, "We learned to rush but not to wait. We have higher incomes but lower morals. We plan more but accomplish less. We've conquered outer space but not inner peace. We split the atom but not our own prejudices. We've been all the way to the moon and back but we have trouble crossing the street to meet the new neighbor. We spend more but we have less. We buy more but we enjoy less." How much longer do we accept all that? And as our hearts change and turn toward God and life, how much longer do we let our friends and our loved ones flounder about discontent and stressed after chasing after that kind of life? Now next week we're going to be challenged, and I hope you'll take this challenge seriously, to consider one person who you know, one person to whom you can be a missionary evangelist. One person whose life could be changed by the story of Jesus. The story which, if you are here, I assume, has already made some kind of difference in your life. Because like the two slaves in the Amistad clip, we have all spent way too long in chains. We've all nearly gone mad from the lies that the world tries to convince us are true. And what's truly amazing about all of this is that this is happening all over the world. It is the coming together of our greatest invention, our language, with the greatest idea that God ever had: to rescue humanity through the death of Jesus Christ and His rising again. I hope you'll join me in this. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.